Good people of YouTube, I'm the Watch Idiot, and the topic of the Rolex steel watch shortage and whether or not it's done on purpose has been talked about quite a bit and is debated amongst watch nuts all over the world. And while I have my thoughts on it, I never really bothered talking about it just because the subject is really just purely based on opinion, speculation, and bordering on conspiracy theories. But all that changed when Rolex put out an official statement about the shortage when responding to an article written by Yahoo Finance. This confirmed for me that while Rolex has a bunch of problems that can be an entire video in and of itself, the shortage itself is not one of them. Well, directly at least. So yeah, let's unpack Rolex's statement because I have a lot of thoughts on it and where I'd like to see things moving in the future. So yeah, let's get into it. So what happened was Yahoo Finance put out an article commenting on the Rolex shortage, and they talked about all the normal stuff, and they reached out to Rolex, to see if they wanted to comment on the article. And the interesting thing is that Rolex actually responded with an actual statement about the shortage. So yeah, here's the official statement from Rolex responding to Yahoo Finance's article. The scarcity of our products is not a strategy on our part. Our current production cannot meet the existing demand in an exhaustive way, at least not without reducing the quality of our watches, something we refuse to do, as the quality of our products must never be compromised. This level of excellence requires time, and as we have always done, we will continue to take the necessary time to ensure that all of our watches not only comply with our standards of excellence, but also meet the expectations of our customers in terms of quality, reliability, and robustness. Rolex does not compromise on what it takes to produce exceptional watches. All Rolex watches are developed and produced in-house at our 4 sites in Switzerland. They are assembled by hand with extreme care to meet the brand's unique and high-quality standards of quality, performance, and aesthetics. Understandably, this naturally restricts our production capacities, which we continue to increase as much as possible and always according to our quality criteria. Finally, it should be noted that Rolex watches are available exclusively from official retailers who independently manage the allocation of watches to customers. And the funny thing is that Hodinkee then reached out to Rolex asking, why Yahoo Finance, of all places, to make such a momentous statement on such a big topic. And Rolex just said that they made the statement because Yahoo Finance just asked for it. I mean, seems simple enough, but I have a feeling that someone out there had asked Rolex about this before Yahoo did, so I'm not sure I buy that. But anyway, let's unpack what this all means. So first of all, you can obviously tell how important the overall quality of the watches are to Rolex because they've spent pretty much half the statement stating in no uncertain terms that they will never cut corners when it comes to quality, which is great to hear because I, for one, wouldn't want Rolex to be compromising on, making their oyster bracelets as silky as possible, making the threading on their crowns absolutely buttery smooth, and finally making the Submariner bezel literally one of the greatest things on this planet Earth. I'm also glad that Rolex actually said that they are trying their best to increase output while maintaining their standards, just because that's obviously one of the things that people love to say, that Rolex isn't producing as many watches as they can, and hence creating this artificial scarcity. The fact of the matter is that giant companies like this can't just decide one day that they want to double their production and then actually go ahead and double their production that day. That's just not how it works. I mean, I think we all got a sense of that at the start of COVID in 2020 when, hand sanitizer, toilet paper, and, soap just ran out, and it took a really long time for the companies to, catch up. And plus, even if they were to increase their production by 10%, which is huge, it's 100,000 extra watches a year, which, by the way, is how many watches Patek and Audemars Piguet produce combined in a year. That's still not going to make very much of a dent in the insane global demand that we have right now. And even if Rolex made 2 million steel watches a year, I don't think that would completely satisfy the wait list worldwide. So yeah, they can't increase their production immediately, but one thing I would like to know is whether or not they've reallocated resources and production power to increase steel watch production by cutting the number of normal unpopular gold watches that are made. So what would happen is that they would keep the production numbers about the same, and they would maintain their high qualities, standards of quality, and they would still, feed the steal frenzy a little bit. Next up, one of the most telling lines from the official Rolex statement was the last line saying, "Finally, it should be noted that Rolex watches are available exclusively from official retailers who independently manage the allocation of watches to customers." And I'm glad they said this because ADs play a huge role in this entire problem. Many ADs play by the rules and they do the right thing and sell their watches at retail without extorting them. And I'm grateful that they exist, but there are a lot of garbage ADs out of there who play all sorts of games with their clients, which is no good. But the worst practice is when they sell to gray market dealers for a huge markup instead of selling to their clients who are trying their best to buy a Rolex through the proper channels. This problem, I'm sure, is, unfortunately, relatively common. And this year, CD Peacock in Chicago, one of the oldest ADs in the country, was sued for allegedly doing all sorts of shady and illegal things by selling Rolex watches and Pateks to the gray market while trying to, cover it up by firing the whistleblowers. Hopefully some good comes out of this, but there is still a lot that Rolex and, Patek for that matter, can do regardless of what happens with this lawsuit. Given the sheer amount of power that Rolex and Patek have over their ADs, I would love for them simply to pull their accounts from CD Peacock and they can say that, I don't know, the events that have transpired, we decided to that our values no longer align with yours and we decided to terminate our relationship. Done. This would be disastrous to CD Peacock, and this would send a clear message to all the ADs that you will get cut if you don't do the right thing. The reason why I'm putting the onus on Rolex and Patek to do this is because they find themselves in a unique position where millions of people around the planet want to buy their watches. So if they cut a bunch of ADs for bad business practices, Rolex and Patek, they won't lose a single penny, because when the watches from the cut ADs are distributed amongst the good ADs, that still won't be enough to satisfy the demand and the wait list at those ADs. But hopefully the ADs doing the right thing will lead to the gray market shrinking a little bit, which will then lead to people being able to buy watches from their ADs, which should hopefully, reduce the perceived shortage and just alleviate the stress a little bit from everyone. So yeah, all in all, I'm really happy that Rolex kind of called out the ADs in the statement, but I do think that there is more that Rolex can do to help the situation. Finally, I want to talk about all the angst and anger that people feel towards Rolex about the eternal waitlist, because products selling out and high demand for particular things is a completely normal phenomenon that happens all over the watch world and outside of the watch world too. There are many brands out there that keep selling out of watches, and every single time that they do come back in stock, they sell it quickly afterwards, which will lead to some waiting. And some of the brands that come to mind are like Laurier, Halios, Chrono, and Ming. I mean, they just have production limitations and they can't keep up with demand, which is totally natural. And we've seen the same thing in the car world with Porsche and their GT cars, and then also we've been seeing the same thing with C8 Corvettes as well. So yeah, there's not very much that Rolex, one of the most recognizable brands on earth, can do if millions of people around the world want to get a Rolex after just knowing about it or seeing it on Instagram, YouTube, and pop culture in general. And to their credit, they do keep on chugging along and making watches continuously at a pace of 1 million a year. So that means that if the stars align, it is possible for you to buy a steel sports watch from Rolex, because they will continue to make these watches until they're updated or replaced. And yeah, let's just be glad that they don't release everything as 1,000 or 2,000 piece limited editions, because that would be awful. So yeah, there you have it. Rolex has finally cleared the air. I mean, as much as a super ultra secretive company could, but I am glad that they did. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about the whole situation and what you guys think should happen, moving forward. And yeah, if you did enjoy this video or found it, helpful, do hit the like button. That would be awesome. And then what would be more awesome is if you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because that helps the channel immensely. And yeah, and a lot more videos to come forward as always. And until the next video, good day.